You know, the thing I didn't realize before becoming an entrepreneur is that you can be absolutely terrified. Your heart can be pounding out of your chest. Your legs can be shaking and still incredibly successful. That's something that I wish I would have known going in, because every day I have to do these crazy, scary things. Like I did a business pitch in front of 1,000 people, and literally all of those things were happening. Like I was sitting there with my legs shaking. But nonetheless, we won, right? And I didn't realize that I always thought you had to have it perfectly buttoned up and feel 100% prepared to be successful. And that is not the world of entrepreneurship.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the None Size Fits All podcast. My name is Jon Boller, co-founder of Grid Consulting. Today I have a special guest. I'm really excited. Stacy Taubman, the CEO and founder of Rise Collaborative, is here. And she's in Denver, right?
I am. I'm in Denver, another amazing co-working space called Galvanize.
So you're in Denver. You're not from Denver. What's new in your life? What's going on with your business?
Well, now I'm here in Denver quite a bit. We are working on taking my business from St. Louis on to our national expansion, with Denver being our first stop.
Awesome. So for our viewers, what is Rise Collaborative?
So Rise Collaborative is both a curated community of professional women who really care about growing personally and professionally, and a workspace to give those women a professional atmosphere to get lots of stuff done. Get it all done when you're feeling crazy.
So the kind of boom of the co-working space, walk us through your story. What's your background and what is the inspiration of Rise Collaborative?
Yeah, so my backstory is I was a high school math teacher, so one would never expect me to be here, but nonetheless, I left teaching to start a company in 2013. It feels like it was yesterday, and hated working from home, right? And in St. Louis, they have lots of great co-working spaces that I'd go check out, but none were quite right for me. So just like any entrepreneur, we build things to solve our problems, right? So since the kind of co-working space that I needed didn't exist, I created it.
Crazy. So what, like the story of going from a math teacher to I'm going to build my own company. It's going to be a co-working space. Right. Where did that come from? Because that's a big jump.
Yeah, so, I was the kid that didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I got my degree in math and math education. And I thought I'll either become a high school principal by the time I'm 28, right? Or be a CEO of some company. And I laughed because I had no idea what CEO ever even stood for. Like if you would have asked, chief executive officer, all I knew was boss. So clearly here there was a theme of me wanting to be the boss of something. But nonetheless, I went on and got my master's in administration, thought I wanted to be a principal at 24, nonetheless. So you can imagine I didn't even really know how to be an adult, let alone be a principal. So while interning, I quickly realized it wasn't the right fit for me. And I went back and got a second master's in school counseling. I wanted to be the good guy, not so much the bad guy. And so now I'm highly educated with 2 masters and 2 undergraduate degrees, and still not the right job for me. And life has a funny way of sending you some loud messages, sometimes good, sometimes not so great. A young woman at my school actually committed suicide on July 4th, 2012, and that was really life-changing for so many of us, you can imagine. And it was a tipping point for me. Enough's enough, right? High school is tough, both for boys and girls. I don't know the boy problems quite as much as I know the girl problems. And around the same time I met an entrepreneur, like 3 weeks later from the suicide, I met an entrepreneur. He started a company when he was 31. No, I take that back. When he was 26. I met him when he was 31, and his company had $40 million in revenue.
Wow. And
I had never met someone like that. Those people I thought were so different from me. And it was really eye-opening that, he's not smarter than me. He's not that different from me. So if he can start a company, why can't I? And the first company I started was in January 2013. It was a tutoring coaching company for high school girls.
Okay. So what was that? That was the Girls Dreaming Big, right?
Yes. I have never taken any real business classes, so I had no idea what I was doing, and I was just kind of willy-nilly trying whatever. I was still teaching full-time, so I would just stand up and teach math, and then sit down, and I'd be surrounded by that young woman's friends, and I'd just ask them, what do you need? What can I create that will be something of value to you and in your life? My first dollar I ever made was taking 5 young women over to Bali for service, sightseeing, and nightly seminars. Yeah. Not gonna lie, I always wanted to go to Bali, so that was a win-win. So I started that company, had success out of the gate, and decided at the end of that school year to really give it a go. I thought if I can have this much success while teaching full-time, imagine what I can do when I'm having all the time in the world to focus on it.
I like to always kind of pick people's minds about that moment, the moment where you finally say, I'm going to go out and do it. Because I think that's a fascinating one. People that are entrepreneurial, like at some point you have to take the leap of faith. Was there a moment for you that you recall where you finally said, like, I'm going to go do this? Or was it end of the school year, I'm going to just see how this goes?
For me, I think it was a lot of little moments, right? It was just all these things leading up to it. First, it was the suicide, then meeting that entrepreneur. And then I don't know if you're familiar with Sheryl Sandberg's TED Talk. It was right around the time that came out. So that got me all fired up. And then Brene Brown, I don't know if you're familiar with her, but her TED Talk became very popular around that same time. And then I took a couple classes like how to start a blog that matters, and just taking all these courses and steps. I think for me, it's more about creating momentum and the snowball effect versus just this light switch that happens.
Let's talk about Rise. Like, what is the kind of mission there? What is the brand? And how is it different than the other co-working spaces that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very much a progression from my first company, Girls Dreaming Big. My whole passion is about creating a pipeline for success for young women. I created this company to do it and, needed a place, needed a home for those high school girls. There's a big difference between being in a library or a Starbucks versus being in a professional setting surrounded by dynamic, impressive women. So how can I, give that company a home and get to have coworkers, right? Like, it wasn't for me so much about leaving a big company because my teaching, the school district wasn't why I was successful. For me, it was about having a place to go and not feeling isolated alone. It's a scary endeavor, starting something from scratch if you've never done it. So it's about building a community. And so, a lot of co-working spaces are amazing and create an awesome environment, but I never quite felt like I walked in and it was the right place for me, like in terms of building community, in terms of a level of professional polish I was looking for. They tended to be more about kegerators and ping pong tables and all that stuff that's so fun and definitely a part of startup culture, but I was beyond startup culture.
Got it. So when we left, we started in a WeWork, and I told you this the other day. Like we looked at every single co-working space in Seattle. And every one of them has like a unique feel and just kind of, aesthetic. What does it look like at Rise? Like when you walk in, what is the setup? Is it a lot of hot desks and then offices, or is it just offices? Like what is Rise all about?
I get really triggered by my environment, and I definitely love to have wide open spaces with tons of natural light. You can see everyone. It automatically feels a sense of community. Our members often talk about how bright and energetic the space is. It's this lovely space where it feels professional, but it also feels like home, right? You don't feel like you're around a bunch of cubicles or super formal, but you still feel like you can get a lot of work done. So it has this crossover feel to it, like a third space. So you can spend all day there and not feel like you're at work.
The companies that are there, are they small, medium? I mean, what's the kind of profile of the companies that are at your co-working space?
Well, it all depends on how the members engage, right? Like in our 11 private offices in St. Louis, those people are there for a full year. It's their office. So I would say they're more small business owners with 1 or 2 employees. But in the open collaborative space, it's a more professional coffee shop, if you will, right? So think about who has coffee meetings. Women from all different backgrounds and walks of life. We have everything from startup to CEO of a $500 million company. And so because it's not so much just about a co-working space and it's much more about a community and it's much more about creating this pipeline for success, they're not joining just for the space, right? They're joining for the vision and the mission of making an impact. And so instead of having coffee meetings at your local coffee shop, you're engaging in a space at Rise instead. I even had a CEO of a $2 billion company for a while. She's still a member, but she's no longer CEO of that company. She's now the executive director of a nonprofit.
Wow. Okay. So I get a membership there. Community is the big thing. And I think, we're now at Galvanize, and Galvanize is all about community as well. What does the week look like? Are there a bunch of kind of coffee structured meetings? Do you have guest speakers in? What do I get out of that membership?
Well, it depends on what level you join. If you're just joining for the community, I would imagine you're joining at the social level, because you get very little access to the workspace, but you care about coming to our events. So we put on weekly events. I'm a nerdy teacher at heart, so every month has what I call curriculum. I'm sure that's not cool in the business world, but nonetheless, we have it. And so every month has a different theme. And then within that theme, every week is a different event. So this week at Rise Collaborative in St. Louis, we have our podcast club. We used to have a book club, but my members are way too type A and busy, so they would never have time to finish the book. So we switched it over to a podcast club where we listen to a podcast that falls under the theme of our curriculum and then discuss it. And like last week, we had a lunch and learn called Eat, Grow, Learn. And next week, we'll have another lunch and learn, and the following week is a power coffee. So every week has different events, and every month those same events occur, but they have different themes and different people who lead it.
Awesome. So community is one thing that I always kind of typically go towards Facebook, where people try to create community within these private groups. And that's really big in real estate. But I guess when you think about building community, how do you successfully do that? How do you foster that type of thing? Because I think everyone tries to build community. It's really, really hard.
It is hard, but being a former math teacher, that's one of the beauties. You know, as a teacher, your whole job is to build community within that classroom. And so my job while at Rise, I feel like I'm the hostess. Like, hi, Sally, do you know Jane? Jane does this, Sally does that, you know. It's about building real connections. Facebook is a great place. You know, people are more connected than ever before because of social media. However, we're more disconnected, right? It's about, because you don't even have to leave your house. So it's about getting people to a space where you feel at home and you feel safe and you can let down your guard. And then it's making the connections, making the introductions, creating an environment where you are open, right, to meeting new people. And you know that everyone you're going to meet is that much cooler than the next person.
Awesome. So let's shift to being an entrepreneur. So math teacher, now you go out and do this coaching and tutoring company, and now you're doing Coworking, which is a huge opportunity. I guess, what have been the biggest kind of surprises for you? What are the things that you wish you would have known that you didn't know as an entrepreneur, and what kind of advice would you give other people that are starting their own journeys?
Well, first of all, I think that word is an interesting word. Going from high school math teacher to then calling myself an entrepreneur, it was a challenging transition. And so much of my identity was wrapped up into like, hi, my name is Stacey, I'm a teacher, right? Like I prided myself on making this impact in people's lives. And that word, I think, can be really intimidating and weighted for a lot of people. I know a lot of women who would not identify as entrepreneur, but in many ways they are. So I find that interesting. You know, the thing I didn't realize before becoming an entrepreneur is that you can be absolutely terrified. Your heart can be pounding out of your chest. Your legs can be shaking and still incredibly successful. That's something that I wish I would have known going in, because every day I have to do these crazy, scary things. Like I did a business pitch in front of 1,000 people, and literally all of those things were happening. Like I was sitting there with my legs shaking. But nonetheless, we won, right? And I didn't realize that I always thought you had to have it perfectly buttoned up and feel 100% prepared to be successful. And that is not the world of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's I mean, we live that every day, where you have these kind of crazy peaks and valleys. And I think the thing that is most exciting about starting your own venture is getting better at going through those moments and realizing that that is just part of the territory and part of what it is that you signed up for. Are there things that you do to kind of like self-medicate, if you will, related to getting through those weird moments?
Yeah. Well, I love me some Netflix, right? That's definitely my downtime self-medicating, if you will. You know, it's more just building up a muscle to know that you can be terrified and successful, right? I think before I didn't think that was possible. And I think the more you do it, the more that muscle gets built up. And so I think it's just about, it's interesting when your livelihood and your success depends on it. You know, you don't have the choice to be comfortable, right? You have to get out there. But in terms of coping, I would probably say having a really amazing community around me, right? Because you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So when I'm having a day where I'm freaking out and thinking there's no way on earth I'm going to pull things off, being able to turn to my neighbor at Rice Collaborative, and she's this dynamic, impressive woman, and she believes in me, is ready to give me an atta girl, that gets me going, right?
Is that something that you do? Is you do these high fives like this?
It's the cheerleader in me, or the jazz hands. It's really embarrassing. clearly was a cheerleader growing up and need to let it go.
Jazz hands, Thriller, Raise the Roof. There's like something going on there.
Yeah.
There's something amazing about the feeling and the kind of endorphin shot that you get when you get a high five. I did a lot of sales early on, and like the high five just feels so good.
Doesn't it though? I'm so much more of a high five girl than the fist pump. I've never gotten into the fist pump. I think it's weird.
Another part of your story, like where you grew up in St. Louis, now you're opening the second office in Denver and talking national expansion. I guess, how did you decide on Denver, and what are the next steps? Like, how fast do you plan to grow your business?
As fast as I can stay sane. I am the poster child of a girl dreaming big. That's why I named that first company that. And, I always had this vision of going national or really global. I would love to have a Rice Collaborative in Paris, so fingers crossed. So it's just a matter of what's the best next step. We were successful in St. Louis. We were cash flow positive within a month or two of opening, and we now have 270 members. So how do we take what we've learned in St. Louis and go national? And so just started identifying 5 to 10 different markets that look like great second markets and digging in, doing the research, and Denver won. Denver is easy to get to. We've noticed a common theme is transition. Think about when you're in transition, whether it's for like a new city, job, life, marriage, you name it. When you're in transition, you're really seeking and craving community. And so we love that Denver, so many people are moving to Denver. So that's a nice point of transition. In St. Louis, there's 72,000 women business owners with no employees. Denver has 88,000. And so looks like a good sized market to us.
So what are the other places? How quickly can you roll this out and continue to keep sane? And then also you're also the host. So how do you scale? Because you obviously can't be at every single location, and community is so important. And it looks like that's something you're really great at.
Thank you. Well, it's about finding and attracts like, right? So I'm attracting people who are also like me, who are great at building community, that really have a passion for what we're doing. So you find that person, it's a general manager, and we have that in St. Louis, and we have it now in Denver. And so that next city, it's finding that same general manager who can take this on and help create what we've created. And luckily now we have processes and a foundation to build on. So yeah, we're looking to other cities in 2020.
How many employees are currently on your team?
Yeah, so in St. Louis, I have a full-time community/general manager and 2 part-time staff. I have a business partner who's also in St. Louis, and then myself here in Denver. I'll be bringing on a general manager in January, and then we're hiring here as well. So really, it takes a general manager and part-time staff.
Got it. Okay. So shifting gears a little bit, one thing that we've noticed is a lot of kind of large companies will use co-working spaces for satellite offices. And then also we've noticed more recently that a lot of kind of real estate teams and brokerages end up at co-working offices. I guess, have you seen that as a trend in St. Louis? And I guess, why do you think that is? Why are people going out and kind of going to the co-working space instead of building their own satellite office?
Yeah, I would compare it to people buying a home versus renting, right? You'll have to hang with me for a minute. I just recently sold and now live in a luxury apartment right next to Rise, both in St. Louis and in Denver. And there's some, while I don't have as much space, right? My space is much smaller. I'm in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. And that same thing, in a co-working space, you're not going to be able to get as much space for an office as you could if you just were on your own. But there's something about having all the amenities, not having to worry about, if the Wi-Fi goes out, all the things that come with being a homeowner, right? You have to take care of that house. You have to furnish it, all of those extra pieces to the puzzle that can be quite daunting and take you away from the things that you're really good at. So same thing with co-working. By being in a co-working space, you have the luxury of not having to worry about furnishing, Wi-Fi. If something breaks, all the day in, day out of having an office, and then you can really focus on what you're doing. And then add to that the social capital piece, right? One of the biggest predictors to success in business is social capital. And being in a co-working space, you have access to quite a bit of social capital.
Totally. Yeah, we came from a very large publicly traded company, and then we went into WeWork, and it was fairly brilliant how they kind of created a bunch of the same amenities that I was used to. Not to the same degree. But there are a lot of things, and for me, it was really just about coffee.
Well, and think about it too. I mean, when you're a small business going into a random office, you're often not going to be able to get the level of quality in real estate. It's expensive, right? So here you are, for us at least, one of our core values is professional polish. So a company can really up their game by being in our space and set a different precedence for their clients and really, wow their clients.
So if I'm moving to Denver, let's say I'm moving to Denver. I'm not, but if I were, I would do the same type of thing where I go to Galvanize and I go to WeWork and I would go to Rise and the Riveter and go to all these different places to see, what it is that I'm going to get. What are the biggest differentiators for your business? Why should somebody come in and work out of Rise versus these other places?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. All of those places are going to have places to work, the good coffee, the Wi-Fi, all that stuff. I go back to that community piece. I mean, and I know that you said that Galvanize has that community piece too, but there's something to be said about when you walk in feeling like you're at home, right? And different people are going to walk in and feel different things in different environments. And I think what's going to draw women into my space is this idea of collaboration and community and giving back to the next generation. So many women are eager to give back to the next generation, and we give them that opportunity through our nonprofit, our mentor program, connecting professional women to high school girls. That is a really fulfilling opportunity to go to work, hang out for the day, and not go home for an extra half an hour or hour and be able to mentor a high school girl. That's life-changing.
Sure. I that part of your story is so interesting because I think about how impressionable we are when we're in high school and even college. And to be able to have access to this network of people that can give back, I find that so interesting. I guess, what was the most fascinating part of when you were doing the tutoring and the coaching? And I imagine you're still doing that.
I finally had to pull back. I couldn't get Denver going and still do that. That was a painful adjustment for me. I ended that in May.
Okay. So what's been the most fascinating part? I think with that moment where we're in high school or we're in our early years of college, we're developing, and having mentors is so critical. Like, what have you learned through that journey with these young kids or young adults?
I mean, I think the big thing is you can't be what you can't see, right? So how can we get high school girls, and even myself, think about it. I was 31, 32, and I was floundering in life, and that exposure to a successful entrepreneur, my path in my life has dramatically changed, right? So the ability to give young women the exposure to really impressive women changes their whole outlook in life. They start to dream bigger, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with being doctor, lawyer, teacher, nurse, but that for me was all I knew, right? I never knew you could make a career or a living doing these really cool different career paths. And so seeing their eyes open to all the possibilities in the world, I think that's been my favorite part.
Sure. So what does the future look like for you? What's your mission? What's your 10-year plan?
Well, I am a girl dreaming big. I want these all over the country, or world, if you will. I went into teaching because I wanted to change the world. I know that sounds hokey and a little over the top, but, think about the movies like Stand and Deliver or Freedom Riders. I'm the girl bawling in the movie theater because of how they changed someone's life, right? And so I went into teaching for that reason. And teaching's great, but I didn't feel like I was able to do that in the way that I knew I was meant to do. So what I love about Rise Collaborative is it gives me that same opportunity of changing someone's life, whether it's a professional woman or a high school girl. And so how can I do that on a much larger, grander scale? And so once we open these up all over, imagine how many lives we're touching and what a big difference that is. So that's one of the things I'm really focused on, is changing lives, which I know is a little fluffy, but it's true. But from a business standpoint, I do want to change the path for women. I do believe in creating this pipeline for success, whether it's high school or a woman in her 50s or 60s. And like we talked about social capital earlier, it's the biggest predictors of success. But that same research shows that women have access to less and different social capital. So how do I create social capital more accessible to women? And I believe having Rise Collaboratives all over really does that. And so once we accomplish that goal, whether that's 5 years from now or 10 years from now, the next step would be starting a venture fund for women. Because I think it's really, how do we help women be more successful? We give them access to cash. And how are you successful as a venture capitalist? Well, you have access to cash and you have access to deals. Well, if I have Rise Collaboratives all over.
There's a lot of those actually here in Seattle. on the VC front. What I think about team, and you obviously have this amazing BHAG and it's huge. What do you think about team development and kind of leveraging team members to grow your business? How do you do that? How do you do that effectively as a leader?
Managing people is not something that comes natural to me. I like ideas. I like solving math problems. The people side of business is way harder. So I think it's about knowing what you don't know, and then surrounding yourself with people who are way better than me. The people we're bringing on understand the bigger vision of what we're trying to accomplish, and the hope is that they're going to rise with us and help fill in my gaps. So like my general manager here in Denver, she comes from an education background. I love me some teachers. She is currently the chief of staff at the Denver Public School District for the assistant superintendent. So she is great at developing people and staff. And so I plan on really letting her take the lead and helping add process to this. And the general manager we're bringing on in January, we're bringing on a different general manager in St. Louis. She has a huge marketing background and has run lots of companies. I see her growing with us and being our CMO.
Got it. Okay, that's great. I mean, I was always taught at my past life that the job of the leader is to basically be able to point off into the distance at the top of the mountain and then ultimately help the team navigate to get there. And I really do believe that is the role of the CEO. I want to kind of shift gears as the ideas person that you are, and thinking of, for instance, Uber. It started as cabs basically, but now they're moving into food delivery and all these kind of adjacent things that I don't think any of us would have thought about in the early days. For real estate team leaders or brokers, a lot of them start in real estate and then they go into mortgages and then they go into title as well. What types of opportunities are there in the co-working space? Are there other things that you can do to create adjacent revenue lines or even just helping people in a more effective way for the people that come and become members?
Yeah, I mean, so we have 3 revenue buckets, right? We have private offices, drop-in members, and then this fancy term of other is what I've been really calling it for the time being. We make a lot of revenue from a lot of these ancillary things that we're offering, whether it's concierge service. We now have a publishing arm. A lot of women and men have this dream to be an author, and it's a little daunting endeavor. So what we've done is create the opportunity for our members to become authors in this program where they meet twice a month and they get the opportunity to write a chapter in an anthology. So we just published our volume 2. 18 of our members each came together and wrote a chapter in this book called On the Rise, Pivotal Points to Success. So that's a really great opportunity because now we have 18 members who are published authors. Additionally, because we have 270 of some of the most impressive women in St. Louis, national brands are recognizing that and wanting access to our community. And so people like Nicole Miller or Warby Parker, they're paying us to put on events. So we've positioned ourselves as more of not just a co-working space, but this, this brand and this event space and providing high value content to the community.
The thing, like just spitballing on this, I think about all of these kind of hidden fees and all of these kind of foreign things that we learn when we're building a company, and figuring out how to basically package that so that every person coming in isn't having to go out and figure out the appropriate legal documents or finding the right lawyer or accountants. I know that we often spend time doing things for the first time, but I wish somebody would have just handed me the starter kit and said,
like a business in a box.
Yeah.
Here is what you need to do it. No, I think it's great. The thing for us that we can't do that, or I'm not ready to do that yet, is that we have the women who are experts in those fields. And they're going to do it better than we ever would. And I love seeing like our small business accountant. Her business has, quadrupled since becoming a member at Rise. So I love instead of us being the experts of that, having that social capital again at the fingertips of our members. Because I think, to your point, when you start out, it's so overwhelming. It's like, who's going to help me with my marketing? Who's going to help me with this and that? Well, it's right here at your fingertips. You don't even have to leave.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the one that stood out, we at one point were told, like, you need to go out and fundraise. And turns out, like, we spent probably 60 days on doing things that we didn't need to do, but we just thought we were supposed to. In reality, it took us 60 days of learning that we didn't need to do that.
Well, I think it's about going back to that quote, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? So who are you surrounding yourself with experts in those fields that can give you valuable, accurate advice? Or are you having to go out and find people that may or may not be giving you the right advice?
Seems like everyone's an expert at being an entrepreneur, apparently. Everyone is an expert.
I call those entrepreneurs. When you have women in your community that are just badasses, that truly have a proven track record and have done things that are really impressive, I mean, that's a valuable opportunity to have those people in your life.
Yeah, so we're in Galvanize, and we're in we were in a WeWork, and we thought it was really important to have a private office so that we can kind of like always be speaking freely. Why should people get a private office at Rise when the community is so important? Like, what's the value in the private office?
Yeah, although we have 270 members in the community and it's much more about this curated community, having a private office really sets you up to be the leader in that community, right? And so when you're thinking about growing your business, there's something to be said about having a place to go every single day. And like you said, being able to shut that door. And it's been really fun to see how the private offices have helped our members' business grow. We have a financial planner who her revenue in the first 2 quarters increased 160% since getting an office in our space. And the interesting thing with her is it wasn't even from getting new clients from our members. It was because of how she changed how she worked. She said there's something about being around this energy where everyone is striving and trying to get work done. It just totally changed for her. Where our accountant who moved in, who quadrupled her business, was because more from the business side of it in terms of our members. So many of my members get to know our accountant who had an office there, and they're like, oh, I want to work with her. So it's really great to see we only have 14 private offices in Denver, and those 14 women really are the leaders in the space. And so if someone's looking to be a leader and get to define the community and help, set us on this crazy, amazing path and be viewed as that leader, we really are looking for those kind of women.
It's an amazing concept as a subject matter expert to be the go-to in that type of collaborative environment. It seems fantastic.
Well, and that's why we strive for industry exclusivity, right? So we only have 14 offices, and imagine if you're the only accountant. Well, yes, we will have 200 and some odd members in the space. There's something to be said about having this beautiful, large office to call your home and be viewed as that leader. So yeah, we strive. That's something different that I don't know if many co-working spaces do, is that we strive for industry exclusivity, right? So we have a digital marketing company, executive director, an accountant, a lawyer, what have you.
And it makes total sense because we're all about, in life, we're moving towards just like frictionless experiences. And if I have somebody that I trust and know down the hall that I'm friends with, I would go to them versus, look on Google and look at reviews.
Well, and think about if you're going to the weekly programming and interacting with the woman to your right and getting to know her on this really personal level, you're much more willing to show behind the curtain of your books or whatever it may be. It's a very personal experience when you're a business owner, right? It's your child. And you want to feel like the person who's helping your child to grow is someone who gets it. And so people want to do business with people they know and trust.
Sure. Okay, so before we get you out of here, you're starting a new office, so you need to go work on that. What's the last message that you want to leave to our viewers? I mean, what is it that inspires you? Is there something you want to remind people of? What is allowing you to continue to drive forward on this big dream of yours?
People often ask me where I get the courage to do these crazy, ridiculous things. And I talk about how, I don't think it's courage, to be honest with you. I think it's a matter of when I hear that something has a 2% chance, let's say, hypothetically, of being successful, I live in the 2%. I don't live in the 98%. And I think there's something to be said about that. But it's a challenging place to live if you surround yourself around with people who don't think like that. So what I've noticed is that I have achieved so much more than ever expected because I surround myself with the crazy dreamers who also live in the 2%. And they believe they can do it. And so when I had that moment where I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm going to accomplish that, I have the person who I write to pick me back up.
Courage is what it's all about. I appreciate that. And I want to thank you for being on today. This was your awesome episode and you're really inspiring. So thank you, Stacy Taubman, CEO and founder of Rise Collaborative.
Thank you.
All righty. So thank you all for viewing in. And check us out on social media. Thanks.